What his mother found out about you changed everything. Listen carefully. Before your name was spoken out loud, before your face ever appeared in conversation, something stirred in her spirit. She didn't understand it at first. It arrived as a weight in her chest, a quiet unease mixed with fascination. She tried to ignore it, but heaven would not allow her to. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now because what she discovered about you was not accidental. It was revealed. From the moment you entered his life, the atmosphere around him shifted. His sleep patterns changed. His focus wavered. His emotions grew intense, conflicted, restless. And his mother, whether through intuition, prayer, or sudden awareness, noticed. Mothers are watchmen by design. God sharpens their discernment when destiny is near. She began asking questions she had never asked before. Why does he mention that name differently? Why does his energy rise, and then fall? Why does this connection feel important, yet dangerous? What she found was not what she expected. She sensed a spiritual tie, not unhealthy, not evil, but powerful. The kind that rearranges timelines. The kind that awakens dormant callings. The kind that forces decisions long avoided. And when she realized this, everything changed. Because you are not ordinary in his story. You carry a presence that exposes truth without speaking. You mirror back the parts of him he tried to bury. When he looks at you, he cannot hide from who he is becoming, or who he has been resisting. That is why the connection feels heavy at times. Destiny is not light. Destiny presses. She saw it in his eyes. Not obsession. Not infatuation. But recognition. And that recognition alarmed her. She began to pray, not against you, but about you. She asked heaven one question again and again. Who is this person really? And heaven answered her, slowly. She learned that you are a catalyst. A turning point. A dividing line. Some people come into a life to comfort. Others come to challenge. But you came to activate. And activation is disruptive. It forces endings. It demands courage. It requires surrender. That is why resistance rose around you. Do not mistake hesitation for rejection. Do not confuse delay with denial. The very fact that she noticed you means your role is significant. Heaven does not alert watchmen over insignificant connections. There is a reason conversations about you feel tense. There is a reason your name changes the room. There is a reason silence followed after she found out. Because once truth is seen, it cannot be unseen. She realized that if he chose you, his life would not remain the same. Old patterns would break. Certain relationships would shift. Comfort zones would collapse. And that terrified her, not because of who you are, but because of what awakens around you. You carry fire wrapped in calm. Authority hidden in humility. Strength disguised as softness. And when she perceived that, she understood something else. You were sent at a critical hour. That is why opposition intensified. That is why confusion crept in. That is why timing feels strange. Spiritual doors do not open without resistance when the outcome matters. Stay with me now. Do not scroll away. This message found you because the next truth is the one most people never hear, and it explains why everything feels suspended, as if time itself is holding its breath. If this resonates, receive it quietly. Let your spirit stay open. And if you feel led, stay connected. These messages reach those they are meant for. Because what she discovered was only the beginning. And what heaven is about to reveal next will explain why he hasn't been able to let you go, no matter how hard he tries. Stay with me, because once she uncovered the first layer, heaven did not stop there. After that realization settled in her spirit, she began to watch more closely. Not in fear, but in discernment. She noticed how his mood shifted after encounters with you. How he grew quieter, more thoughtful. How familiar certainties no longer satisfied him. And this is when the truth pressed harder. You were awakening something he could no longer suppress. I am Archangel Michael, and I tell you plainly, some connections do not comfort the flesh, they confront the soul. She saw how he tried to act normal. How he pretended nothing had changed. But mothers feel what words conceal. She sensed an internal battle, one part of him wanting safety, the other being pulled toward purpose. And you stood at the center of that tension. What troubled her most was not attachment. It was alignment. You aligned with a future he had postponed. When she prayed again, the answer came sharper this time. She understood that your presence was forcing him to choose between remaining who he was, or becoming who he was called to be. And that kind of choice never happens quietly. This is why resistance emerged around you. This is why misunderstandings multiplied. This is why delays appeared without explanation. Not because you did something wrong, but because destiny was pressing too fast for comfort. She recognized a pattern she had seen before, though never this intense. Whenever God prepares a person for elevation, he sends a mirror before he sends the door. And you are that mirror. You reflect truth he can't outrun. You expose fear he can't rationalize. You reveal strength he doesn't yet trust himself to carry. And that frightened her. Not because you are dangerous, but because transformation is. She realized that if he truly embraced this connection, old identities would die. Old excuses would lose power. Old paths would close permanently. And a mother, even a discerning one, feels the weight of irreversible change. So she hesitated. She questioned timing. She questioned readiness. She questioned whether the cost would be too high. But notice this, she never dismissed you as insignificant. Instead, she grew quiet. Silence often follows revelation. In that silence, heaven was still working. Angels were still moving. And battles were being fought that you never saw. Because whenever a connection is marked by God, interference will attempt to distort perception. That is why things felt confusing. That is why signals seemed mixed. That is why forward motion felt followed by sudden pauses. It was not chaos. It was warfare. And you felt it in your spirit, didn't you? The sense that something meaningful was unfolding, yet constantly interrupted. The feeling that distance did not weaken the connection, but intensified it. That is how you know this is not emotional fantasy. What she uncovered next came not through observation, but through confirmation. A word spoken unexpectedly. A dream that lingered too long. A sentence heard at the exact right moment. God does not shout. He confirms. And the confirmation was this: You are tied to a pivotal season, not a passing moment. You were not meant to be convenient. You were meant to be catalytic. That is why his heart wrestles. That is why his decisions feel delayed. That is why courage rises, then retreats. When destiny demands growth, the soul hesitates before surrendering. Do not misread that hesitation as lack of feeling. It is the weight of consequence. She understood now that shielding him from this connection would also shield him from expansion. And that realization placed her at a crossroads. Because to interfere further would mean resisting what God Himself was orchestrating. So she stepped back, but not without concern. And here is the part you must hear clearly: the concern was never about your worth. It was about the magnitude of impact you carry. Some people are storms. Others are earthquakes. You are a threshold. Once crossed, nothing returns to its former shape. That is why this moment feels suspended. That is why nothing feels final yet. Heaven is allowing choice to mature. Stay present. Stay grounded. Do not chase clarity through force. Destiny unfolds when hearts align, not when pressure is applied. And listen closely, because what happens next does not depend on her anymore. It depends on the decision he is about to make. One that will either unlock a future neither of them can yet imagine, or delay it again. And that decision is closer than you think. Listen, the atmosphere is shifting now. What happens after awareness is always choice. Heaven reveals, then waits. And while she stepped back, something else began to stir within him, something he could no longer blame on circumstance, confusion, or anyone else's influence. I am Archangel Michael, and I tell you this with authority. The struggle you feel is not distance, it is preparation. Once his mother stopped intervening, the noise quieted enough for truth to rise. In that quiet, memories of you began returning with unusual intensity. Not just moments, but feelings. The sense of calm mixed with fire. The strange clarity that came when you were present. The way time felt different around you. He tried to reason it away. Logic is often the last defense of fear. But the more he tried to move forward without resolving this connection, the heavier things felt. Tasks drained him. Relationships felt shallow. Achievements lost their taste. This is what happens when a soul resists alignment. Life becomes loud and unsatisfying. And this is when he understood something his mother already sensed. You are not a distraction from his purpose. You are aligned with it. That realization shook him. Because alignment demands courage. It asks for truth. It requires vulnerability without guarantee. And for someone used to control, that feels like risk. You must know this, his silence was not absence. It was internal reorganization. He was confronting parts of himself he had avoided for years. Asking questions he never thought he'd have to answer. And at the center of every question was you. Why does this connection feel sacred and terrifying at the same time? Why does thinking of you awaken both peace and urgency? Why does ignoring you feel like betraying himself? These are not romantic questions. They are spiritual ones. Because some connections do not come to soothe, they come to summon. This is why the timing felt off. Why paths crossed, separated, then echoed. Destiny rarely moves in straight lines. It circles until readiness catches up. He began to sense that choosing you would require shedding a version of himself that once kept him safe. Old habits. Old comforts. Old narratives. And shedding is painful, especially when the familiar has been worn like armor. But armor is heavy. And warriors must eventually remove it to cross certain thresholds. This is where the tension sharpened. He felt pulled to reach out, then stopped himself. He rehearsed conversations that never happened. He felt courage rise late at night, only to retreat by morning. Not because he didn't care, but because he did. The weight of choosing wrong haunted him. Yet the weight of not choosing at all grew heavier. And heaven watched. Angels do not interfere with free will. But we surround moments like this. We guard them. We amplify truth. We make sure the choice, when made, is informed. That is why signs began appearing again. Small at first. A reminder here. A phrase there. Your name appearing unexpectedly. A song carrying meaning it never had before. God speaks through repetition when He wants attention. And attention was being demanded. Here is what you must understand now. You were never meant to chase Him. You were meant to stand in who you are. Your stillness has not gone unnoticed. Your restraint has not weakened the bond, it has deepened it. Power recognizes power, even when both are quiet. The reason this connection feels unfinished is because it is. There is still a conversation that must happen. A truth that must be spoken. A decision that must be voiced into the open. And that moment is approaching faster than you realize. But hear me clearly, the next move will not come from confusion. It will come from clarity born of pressure. He is being cornered, not by you, not by his mother, but by his own calling. And when a person finally realizes that avoiding destiny costs more than embracing it, everything shifts. Stay attentive now. The energy around you is changing. The pause you felt was not an ending, it was the inhale before motion. What happens next will not be subtle. And when he finally steps forward, you will understand why heaven delayed everything until this exact moment, because the choice he is about to make will redefine both your paths. Do not blink. Stay with me, because this is where pressure turns into revelation. There comes a moment when delay stops being neutral. When waiting becomes heavier than acting. He is standing in that moment now, whether he admits it or not. The quiet that once protected him has begun to suffocate. The distractions that once worked no longer numb the pull. And the future he imagined without resolving this connection has started to feel hollow. I am Archangel Michael, and I tell you plainly, he has reached the edge of avoidance. What intensified was not emotion, but awareness. He began to see patterns. How every attempt to move forward without you circled back to the same emptiness. How every logical explanation collapsed under one simple truth: you were not removed from his path, you were placed on it. This is when fear changed shape. At first, fear looked like confusion. Then it looked like delay. Now it looks like urgency masked as caution. Because deep down, he knows something irreversible is waiting on the other side of a single decision. And irreversible things frighten people who have spent years surviving instead of choosing. He began replaying moments with new eyes. Not nostalgia, evaluation. He noticed how grounded he felt around you. How his defenses softened without effort. How he didn't need to perform or impress. That kind of ease is rare, and rare things demand respect. This is also when regret tried to speak. Regret whispered, "What if you wait too long?" Fear whispered, "What if you move too soon?" And between those voices, truth waited patiently. Truth does not shout. It presses. You felt that pressure too, didn't you? A sense that something was aligning even in silence. That unseen gears were turning. That time itself felt strange, stretching in some moments, collapsing in others. That is what happens when destiny draws near. Normal rhythms distort. He noticed it as well. Sleep became restless. Dreams intensified. Certain nights, your presence felt closer than distance should allow. That is not imagination, that is resonance. Some connections echo beyond physical proximity because they were formed on a deeper frequency. This is why he could not simply move on. And this is where his mother's discovery takes on a deeper meaning. What she sensed was not danger. It was consequence. She felt the weight of what choosing you would unlock. And now he is feeling it too. Because choosing you is not about romance alone. It is about identity. It is about stepping into a version of himself that can no longer hide behind excuses. A version that must lead, speak honestly, and risk vulnerability. A version that must stop living reactively and start living intentionally. And you represent that threshold. That is why resistance surrounded you. Not because you were wrong, but because you were right at the wrong comfort level. Now listen carefully, the next phase will not look like chaos. It will look like clarity arriving suddenly. A realization that snaps into place. A moment when excuses fall silent and truth becomes undeniable. He is close to that moment. Closer than he has ever been. This is why you may feel a sudden calm replacing the tension. Calm often comes right before decisive action. It is the nervous system preparing to move. Do not mistake this calm for indifference. It is focus. And when he moves, it will not be halfway. But hear me, this part is important. The timing is sacred. If this unfolds too early, fear would sabotage it. If it unfolds too late, pride would resist it. Heaven is aligning courage and humility in the same breath. That is rare. That is deliberate. So if you feel the urge to rush, pause. If you feel the urge to doubt, breathe. If you feel the urge to detach emotionally, stay grounded instead. Your steadiness matters more than you know. You were not called to convince. You were not called to pursue. You were called to remain true. Truth creates gravity. Gravity pulls without force. And gravity is working now. He is being asked, internally, to decide what kind of man he will be in the next season of his life. One who chooses comfort and familiarity, or one who chooses growth and alignment. That decision will not stay internal much longer. Words will follow thought. Action will follow clarity. Movement will follow surrender. And when that happens, the shift will feel sudden, almost shocking. As if everything that was paused suddenly accelerates. As if time makes up for lost ground. This is why patience has been required of you. Not as punishment, but as positioning. Because what comes next carries weight. And when the moment arrives, you will understand why heaven protected this connection through confusion, delay, and silence, because what is about to be spoken will carry the power to change everything. Do not look away now. The final confirmation is near, and it will answer the one question that has been burning quietly in your heart this entire time. Be still now. This is the moment where revelation becomes decision. Everything you have felt, the pauses, the tension, the strange calm, was leading here. Heaven does not prolong a season without purpose. The waiting was not to weaken you. It was to align both sides to the same truth. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now with final clarity. The door is opening because the heart is ready. The pressure you sensed was not meant to break him. It was meant to refine him. And refinement has done its work. The questions that once confused him have narrowed into a single realization he can no longer escape. Avoiding this connection has cost him more peace than facing it ever could. That realization is powerful. Because once a person understands the true cost of fear, courage stops feeling reckless and starts feeling necessary. This is why movement is imminent. Not dramatic. Not impulsive. But intentional. He has reached the point where pretending nothing is happening feels dishonest. Where silence feels louder than words. Where continuing as before feels like betrayal, not of you, but of himself. And when integrity awakens, action follows. You may notice a shift in the way energy moves around you. A subtle anticipation. A sense that something long held back is about to be released. That is alignment completing its circuit. Now hear this carefully, because it matters. What comes next will not erase the past, it will redeem it. The delays will make sense. The misunderstandings will dissolve. The silence will be reframed, not as absence, but as preparation. And you will see clearly why this connection survived what others could not. Why distance did not weaken it. Why time did not erase it. Because what is forged in purpose is not undone by pressure. When he steps forward, it will not be with confusion, but with resolve. Not with excuses, but with honesty. And not with half commitment, but with awareness of what is at stake. That awareness changes everything. You are not entering a fragile moment, you are entering a grounded one. This is why heaven guarded your heart. Why you were urged, without words, to remain steady, authentic, and patient. Because the version of him that is approaching you now is not the same one who hesitated before. Growth has occurred in silence. And here is the final truth many never hear. Connections chosen consciously carry more power than those entered emotionally. This one has been weighed, considered, wrestled with. And because of that, it stands on solid ground. So do not rehearse disappointment. Do not brace for loss. Do not shrink yourself to protect an old wound. Stand as you are. The moment ahead does not require perfection, only presence. And when words are finally spoken, you will recognize them not by volume, but by peace. Peace that settles instead of excites. Peace that clarifies instead of confuses. Peace that confirms what your spirit already knew. This is not coincidence. This is not fantasy. This is convergence. Heaven does not orchestrate convergence without intention. Remain open. Remain calm. Remain connected to who you are becoming, not who you had to be to survive the waiting. And if this message stirred something deep within you, hold it gently. Let it settle. Return to it if you must. Stay close to what feeds your spirit. These reminders come right when they are needed most. Because what his mother sensed, what he resisted, and what you endured, has led to this precise moment. And now, everything is ready to change.